So Adrian asked if I could prepare a short presentation on what inspired me to set up Slow the Flow back in 2016. In a sentence or two, it was because I had very little confidence in our authorities to A, implement a solution for the Calder Valley, and B, if I was wrong about A, then even so, it would be a very long time before they did. After 10 years of waiting, I'm still sceptical about A, and it seems I was right about B. So why did I think in this way in the early part of 2016? What do I do, Wade? Left?
That's it.
Yeah.
There you go. Now another one. There we go.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is go through some of my previous experiences, which is kind of, we're all products of our own experiences, and so it's probably easier if I just reflect on a few things. So in 1994, I was in my early 30s. I was working as a geotechnical engineer for a large firm of consulting engineers on a job in Waterfoot. And Waterfoot, in case you don't know, is a small village in the Rossendale Valley. So the firm I was working for were appointed by the National Rivers Authority, which was the predecessor to the Environment Agency, to undertake a feasibility study for a flood alleviation scheme in the village. And I was responsible for the management of a ground investigation in that town. So Waterfoot itself, if you know it, is built adjacent to and over the Whitewell Brook, which drains moorland into the River Irwell, and it is situated at the confluence of these two streams. It had flooded numerous times over the prior years. The village was similar to Ludden in that the stream was surrounded by houses, shops, industrial premises, all effectively acting as the river walls. The mooted solution was a tunnel beneath the village to divert some of the water to the Irwell, as the stream channel could not cope with the peak flows. I was in the village for about 8 weeks, carrying out boreholes, trial pits, which meant speaking and engaging with the locals, some of whom I ended up on first name terms with. They were all too keen to assist when I explained what we were doing. I heard all about their plight, the depths of the water, the damage, the silt, the sewage, the filth that washed through their houses, precisely as experienced here in the valley in later years. After we had finished the drilling, a period of about 3 months was spent in the office designing a scheme sufficient enough to cost, which was all submitted to the NRA shortly afterwards. Eventually, after the NRA had carried out their assessments, the news came back that the scheme had been shelved. The reason given was because the scheme did not fit the required cost-benefit ratios, and it was considered more cost-effective to compensate the locals for any future flood events. So moving on, fast forward to 2003. I'm going to lump this together with the 2008 experience, which was very similar. I was working independently for my own business, and taking these two experiences together, the River Sow at Stafford and the River Nene at Wisbeach, we had been appointed to look at reducing costs for these two budget schemes. Both schemes involved conventional flood alleviation approaches, constructing new higher walls at Stafford and retrofitting and raising existing walls at Wisbeach. The schemes are over-engineered and therefore expensive. In the case of Wisbeach, impossible to actually construct without damaging the river environment. So with much difficulty and resistance, we managed to persuade the authorities that far cheaper and more practical solutions were available. This we did by load testing foundations successfully, which we eventually convinced them. Without our input, it is possible the schemes would have gone the way of Waterfoot, as they fell outside the cost-benefit criteria. So summing up, there is a common theme here between these three examples, and that is, of course, costs and their relationship with benefits. Coming back to the Calder Valley, I knew the costs for a flood alleviation scheme would be huge. I knew the difficulties in building such a scheme in restricted access, and I knew from the three projects I have mentioned that cost-benefit ratios would be a major stumbling block for a small town like Hebden Bridge. This has been adequately demonstrated by the length of the time the design of the Hebden Bridge flood alleviation scheme has taken, and the reduction in its scope at Calder Holmes, Erringdon and Stubbingholme Road. From 50 million mooted around pre-COVID to more than 90 million today, nearly double the cost for a much smaller scheme. In a similar vein to the HS2 project, achieving rather less for more. The idea for an interim solution immediately implementable at low cost that might reduce flooding in the Calder Valley through natural flood management processes was born from these experiences. I do hope for Edmund Bridge that it does get its long-awaited flood alleviation scheme, but as I mentioned, I am sceptical, as I don't believe even today it is yet fully funded. So in the early part of 2016, I made contact via Facebook with people at Pickering. Pickering had a long record of flooding on a regular basis. However, it avoided flooding over the Christmas period of 2015, which caught my attention via the media. I met Mike Potter, who came to visit us in the Calder Valley during winter of 2016, and he invited me to come and see the leaky dams on the Pickering Beck, some of which had been built by volunteers. His determination to do something for his town, following repeated flood events, inspired me to look deeper into an emerging practice known as natural flood management. With this new knowledge, I undertook some testing on some streams close to where I live. I didn't have any logs, but I did have some old roofing sheets, which I made plateways from, as you can see in the photograph. I measured the flows upstream and downstream of a flight of these weirs using a very sophisticated washing up bowl and a stopwatch, and convinced myself of their efficacy to reduce the flow rates downstream. I published some of my findings on Facebook, through which I met Amanda McDermott and Robin Gray, and the three of us went on to form a small group, which started meeting in Hebden Bridge to form what later became Slow the Flow. Robin organised a conference called The Science of the Floods, which raised the profile of our new group. The group grew quickly, with grateful thanks to Adrian Horton, Bede Mullen, Steve Garrett, Therese Degnan and Joey Williams, all joining the ranks in those early days, with an effective mix of skills that could take our ideas forward and promote natural flood management both locally and nationwide, and that is what we did. We approached the National Trust and sought permission to undertake some leaky dams within Hardcastle Crags. This they agreed to do, which led to a major NFM project there and elsewhere, which Rosie will be, where she is, yes indeed, yes, will be telling us all about next. So, finally, returning briefly to Waterfoot, I often think about this village when I pass through the Rossendale Valley. A tunnel really never was going to be a realistic option, but was that really the only solution? I wonder now, in the light of what we have done in this valley, what could have been done upstream far cheaper. Thank you so much for your attention.